So now that the dust has settled from Election Day, I see a lot of people trying to wrap their minds around why Democrats won so big. And I've saw a lot of good takes from several creators, but one of my favorite takes that I saw was from one of my favorite content creators, Superman Todd. He was talking about why he thought Andy Beshear got reelected in Kentucky, and he said he thought it come down to women voters. He talked about how that a lot of guys he went to high school with was online saying things like, we're not going to forget that Andy made us wear a mask during the pandemic. We're not going to forget that Andy closed down the churches. And he said, yeah, but at the end of the day, the women went in the voting booth and they realized that their reproductive rights have been taken away, and they realized that Andy Beshear was a man who would stand up and fight for that. And I thought that was a really great take from Todd, but there's one thing I wanted to add to it. I think a lot of people needs to understand the difference between a temporary inconvenience and human rights being stripped away. You know, a lot of things that people get bent out of shape over and really gets the most emotional over are things that are temporary. Gas prices are temporary. They go up and down despite who the president is. Inflation is temporary. It goes up and down, you know, regardless of who the president is. The price of groceries, they're things that goes up and down. And yeah, it's ridiculous to pay $7 for a bag of Doritos. I'll give you that all day long. But what's even more ridiculous is that women's reproductive rights were taken from them. There is women out there whose lives will be on the line because of those decisions. And you're complaining over the fact that you had to wear a mask temporarily. I remember Andy Beshear saying, we're going to have to do these things until we get this under control. He was trying to be the adult in the room. And you were inconvenienced and you were mad at him for that. You really need to understand the difference between a temporary inconvenience and human rights being stripped away. Because what we saw from this Supreme Court, we saw women's reproductive rights be taken away. We saw rights be taken away from the gay and trans community and people of color. And these are things that are going to have a massive effect, a massive negative effect on their lives for years to come. We'll get control of inflation. We'll get control of the price of Doritos eventually. We'll figure those things out. But there's more important things to be talking about. There's more important things to be worrying about. So when I go in to vote, and I'm not in Kentucky, I didn't vote for Andy Beshear, but had I been in that scenario, I would have went in going, well, you know what? Yeah, inflation's kind of through the roof, and I paid $7 for that bag of Doritos, but I want my daughter to have the same rights that my mother had when she had me. I want my gay and trans friends and people of color, I want them to be able to live the same life and have the same rights and have the same freedoms that I do. Because if one of them isn't free, there ain't none of us free. And I can't say that enough. I can't stress that enough. So just because you've been temporarily inconvenienced, you know, you're like the spoiled brat who got grounded one weekend and missed WrestleMania, and you're mad about it to this day. My daddy took my TV from me and I missed getting to see Stone Cold. Who gives a shit? Your daughter doesn't have the same rights your mother had. And they sat there. Your daughters, your girlfriends, your sisters, your moms, they sit there and listen to you bitch about Andy and the mask. But when they went into the voting booth, they realized that there was a lot more serious issues at hand. And guess what? You ain't having to wear that mask no more, are you? You ain't having to do that no more. You're right back at church. You're praising the Lord every Sunday, ain't you? They're sitting there with their rights still taken. That's the difference. Stop getting bent out of shape over temporary inconveniences and start recognizing that some of your fellow Americans' rights have been stripped away. And it's serious. It's life-threatening, life-altering in a lot of cases. And you're worried about Doritos. It just goes to show that you don't know how government works. It just goes to show that you really don't know how life in general works. When you go off on these long-winded rants about something that just temporarily inconvenienced you, look at the bigger picture. Think about the bigger picture when you vote, instead of just you and your selfishness.